What's good, everybody? Episode 37 of the Slip and Weed podcast coming at you. My guest this week is Jamie Calderon from Calderon Boxing Talk. We cover a lot of different things, some of the fights he's been able to cover, some of the great fighters that he's been able to interview and get to talk to. We talk about some of the fights that have been signed recently, some fights that are coming up. You know, he's a really cool dude. He's very knowledgeable, and we had a great conversation. I really enjoyed it and hope you do too. Tell me a little bit about you and your channel and how you got into boxing and how ultimately, you know what I'm saying, you started your channel.
Oh, basically, I'm a big boxing fan. I've been a boxing fan since the 1980s and stuff. I'm an old head. So, I always talk about boxing and stuff. And my friends were always telling me, you should do some videos and everything like that. And then I used to follow T Street Controversy for a while. So, I used to watch his videos and stuff like that. And then one day we were just chopping it up late night. And I said, you know what, I could do this and stuff like that. So I just started my videos back in 2015. I started doing my first video on YouTube. I started the Facebook group page. I did the Instagram, the Twitter. And from there, it started taking off a little bit and stuff. I started building up a fan base. I went to a lot of boxing events. I work for an airline. I work for JetBlue Airlines and everything. So that's my 9-to-5 job right there. I've been doing that for years. So I'm able to fly for free and go to different events. So I go to Vegas a lot. I go to New York because I'm from New York. I'm from Brooklyn. So, I now live in Florida. So I go to the fights in Madison Square Garden, the Barclays Center, Vegas, Washington, D.C. I got family out there. So I go to some of the events that they had over there in Washington. And basically, I started just hustling. I used to be in the music industry and stuff. So, I had a lot of events that I used to go to as a club promoter. I used to do, parties and stuff like that. So I had that same mentality of hustling to get interviews. So I would wait for people coming out, from the press conference, from the weigh-ins and stuff like that, and just run up on them and just do interviews with them. And then from there on, I started getting a little bit of notoriety and I started getting credentials. I started applying for credentials because I started building a little buzz and stuff. And in about 2019, I started getting my first credentials with Top Rank, and then with Matchroom Boxing and stuff. So those are only two that I've been able to get so far and everything. The pandemic hit, so it kind of put everything in a standstill and shit. But I'm glad. I appreciate that. You reached out because right now I've been at a slow pace right now. The luster has died down a little bit. Because of everything happening. I haven't did an interview in like about a year and stuff.
I mean, that's most everybody right now, man, right? I mean, it's all pretty quiet right now. And of course, with the bubble events now, to be able to get into a bubble where there's all of the testing and of course, justifiably everybody's being careful, but there's just not as many people in there covering fights and doing that kind of thing. But I've seen a bunch of your videos, man. It's cool how you kind of get into like the guts of the event and you find your way to the people who are worth kind of talking to. What was kind of like the fighters that were your inspiration?
I grew up in the 80s. So, my favorite fighter of all time is Thomas the Hitman Hearns. That's my guy. I love the jab that he had. I love the power that he had. When he knocked out Roberto Duran, when he had the great fights against Sugar Ray Leonard and stuff. I was also a big Larry Holmes fan. People think, the 80s, Mike Tyson, Brooklyn, that's where I'm from. I wasn't really a Mike Tyson fan. I was more of a Larry Holmes fan. I started watching boxing when I was very small. I think I was like about 5, 6 years old with my dad. And the first fight I think I actually saw was Muhammad Ali versus Larry Holmes. Wow. And from that point on, like I was hypnotized, especially with Larry Holmes, because, at that time when you're that small, you don't realize that, Muhammad Ali was way past his prime. You know what I mean? But his name was so big and everybody was talking about Muhammad Ali, how great he was back then. So when a guy comes in and wrecks him and stuff like that, you think like, oh, who's this guy right here? And from that point, it stuck with me as a young kid that Larry Holmes was that guy. He was the next guy that was going to take over and stuff, until Mike Tyson, beat up an old Larry Holmes. And I was like, I hate Mike Tyson.
Yeah. And of course, the Michael Spinks fights.
Yeah.
Fights with Michael Spinks.
Yeah. I was there. I was watching that in actually my godfather's house with my dad. And everybody was there. Everybody was talking shit. My godfather didn't like Tyson either. He was like, Spinks is gonna beat him up and this and that. And he got blown out like I think 90 seconds first round.
That fight is a quickie. That shit is crazy, man.
Yeah. Mike Tyson was a beast.
I mean, as far as just one punch click and you're on your ass punching power.
Yeah.
Obviously one of the most explosive guys ever. Yeah, man. I mean, I grew up in New York too. And a lot of the guys, when I was growing up, it was like, Cotto was really big in New York. Zab Judah was really big. It was kind of that era. I guess I got into it just kind of at the tail end of the Roy Jones era. Because I remember one of the first fights I watched kind of being, I think I actually was him and Tarver, the first fight with him and Tarver.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Fights that I was like super into.
The first one or the second one?
The first one, actually. The first one, and
you caught him at his downtime. And he got slept.
But I thought Roy won the fight. Tarver kept saying, "Oh, I won the fight," but I felt like Roy won the fight pretty clean. And then that second one, obviously,
he got knocked out.
That was one of those moments where it was like the whole pound for pound scene of boxing changed like one punch.
The 90s was great, man. I started like collecting magazines, Ring Magazine, KO Magazine.
I got my stack right there.
If you watch some of my earlier YouTube videos when I first started, I used to put up, my posters. I had posters in the background from the KO Magazine and everything like that. Right. I would take out the posters, put it on the back, for the backdrop and stuff. And that's how I used to start a lot of my videos, with a different poster all the time. Trinidad, I was a big Tito Trinidad and Puerto Rican. So, I was, before Cotto, it was Trinidad. Trinidad was the god of Puerto Rico and stuff. I love the knockout power. I love that he'd get knocked down, come right back. He had that warrior mentality and stuff. So, I love Tito Trinidad. Then Cotto was a different type of fighter. He wasn't as beloved as Tito was. But Cotto, I think I actually been to more Cotto fights than any other fighter. Like
that, I would say the same for me, actually.
Yeah.
Which ones you been to?
Oh my God! I think I started with the Zab Judah, the Sugar Shane Mosley.
I was at that fight.
I was at the Joshua Clottey. I was also at the first fight of Margarito in Las Vegas when he lost.
Wow.
Yeah, I was there for that one. Man. I was at the Yankee Stadium one when he beat Foreman.
Really?
Foreman? Yeah, that was
beautiful. Stewart, right?
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was at Yankee Stadium. That was a nice setting.
How was it going to a fight at Yankee Stadium?
Man, it was great. It's huge. Like, I never been to a boxing match in an actual stadium. I've been to Madison Square Garden. I've been to MGM, Mandalay Bay, all those places. But a stadium, I've never done a stadium other than that. I've been to concerts at Yankee Stadium, Jay-Z and Eminem and shit. But I've never been to a boxing fight in a stadium, and that was my first experience. So it was great. It was great.
Yeah, it seems like that would be almost like pre-COVID. That would be almost common sense that you would do it.
Yeah, that was. Man,
why is that? Like, I wonder why that's not more common. You know what I mean?
Here in the United States, they don't really got a lot of stadiums like that. Like, they don't do it in football stadiums, other than Dallas Cowboys Stadium and stuff like that. But I mean, it's not a big attraction, boxing. Boxing ain't what it was back then. When Muhammad Ali was fighting and what you call it, Sugar Ray Leonard and those guys, they attracted a lot of fans. Chavez, he used to do fights in stadiums as well, and it would sell like thousands, like 60-something thousand. I think, what was it? Pernell Whitaker and him did like about 68,000 people.
I mean, to be fair, Anthony Joshua can still sell out Wembley, which is 80.
Yeah,
80,000
see, but that's a common thing in the UK. The UK, all those fights are mostly in stadiums. You know what I mean? They have arenas, but they're big joints. They're mostly in stadiums. Those guys, they have a strong fan base in the UK. I love the UK. That's my dream right there, to go to the UK and cover a fight out there.
Absolutely, dude. I think the UK boxing culture, there's a respect for the fighters that I think sometimes gets missed. Like even in the telecasts, if I'm watching the zone, I feel like the broadcast is much better when it's the English telecast because they're more knowledgeable. They don't take the same kind of shots. I feel like American broadcasters can sometimes make it more almost personal than it needs to be. Whereas the British, yes. Whereas the British commentators, it does have a more kind of balanced feel to it, where they really are calling it as it is. I don't feel like they have it scored in their mind before it starts. You know that thing where you watch a fight and it's like, I don't know what fight these guys are watching.
Yeah,
they got a story in their head about what this fight's going to be.
The UK guys are very passionate, and they are biased, going into fights and everything like that, but they definitely tell it how it is when it's going on and their man is losing. You know what I mean? They keep it real. But they're a little biased over there too and stuff.
It's a different kind of bias. Whereas with an American the American commentary, I often feel like they have it in their head what they're looking to see, and then they're trying to match that, as opposed to looking at the fight, seeing it for what it is, and calling. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example of that. I remember there was a fight with Charlo and Korobov. And I remember they were calling the fight, and Korobov was just cracking him with right hands for the first 6 rounds. And they're talking about Charlo's boxing well, and he's warming up and this and that. They barely saying this kid's name. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's like a perfect example where it feels like they have it written in their head how they want this to go,
Yeah, I mean, you got that a lot with PBC. They do that a lot and stuff like that. And ESPN is guilty of it as well and stuff. I mean, I guess it's just the American way that they they always play the good guy, bad guy. If you notice the commentators, you got one guy, he's like what's the guy from America's Got Talent? Caldwell?
Right.
He's like that type of guy.
Yes.
And everything. Like, he always has to say something negative. And then the other guy is the positive guy and stuff. Right. So yeah, it's the same thing.
So I was actually I was watching some of your videos, and I just wanted to know, like, how did the Juan Manuel Marquez interview come about? Because it looked like you're not at a fight or some shit.
Bro, I was at work. Right. That was a straight up, like, I'm working, and my boy calls me up, my coworker. He's like, yo, I got Marquez here. Now, Marquez, I live in Orlando, Florida. So Marquez is always in and out of Orlando. I think he got a crib out here. So, he flies to Mexico City. So my boy hits me up. He was like, listen, he goes, I got Marquez over here by the gate. He's by himself. He's always traveling by himself.
Right.
So, I ran over there. I walked up to him. Now, I'm Puerto Rican, but my Spanish, I'm a New Yorican. So my Spanish ain't up to par with the guys from the island. So, I got that broken in Spanglish. And I'm, talking to him, and I've always noticed that he does interviews in Spanish. And I'm like, how the hell I'm going to do this? Like, I really want to interview. He's my favorite Mexican fighter of all time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And,
legend.
I started talking, and he spoke English. So I went and I did this interview in English, and I think I'm like one of the only rare interviews that he has done in English.
I've yet to see another one.
I haven't seen one, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure there is, but I haven't seen one in English, and he did pretty good and everything like that. And I did it right on the spot, like right in the airport. He was there. He was leaving to Mexico City. He's a down-to-earth guy, great guy, always stops to take pictures and talk to you and everything like that. Like I said, every time I see him coming through Orlando, he's by himself. There's no entourage or nothing like that. He's a little short guy. I'm a short guy. So, he did the interview, and this was during the time that he wanted to fight Miguel Cotto. So, we got into that conversation. He wanted Cotto to come down to 147. And, we touched on Manny Pacquiao, that was a great, knockout that he had against Manny Pacquiao, because I went crazy because, I like Pacquiao. He's a great fighter. But, my guy was Marquez, and I love the wars that they had. That was like one of the greatest rivalries in boxing, that go up there with, Barrera and Morales, all those guys that had great trilogies and stuff like that. And they fought 4 times. And that knockout was like the icing on the cake. And I was like, super ecstatic to be interviewing him. And we also touched on Timothy Bradley, that he wanted no part with Timothy Bradley. He was like, nah, I don't want that fight again. he didn't even want to revenge that loss that he got against Bradley because the style matchup, it was just too much for him and stuff. But it was a great interview.
Oh yeah, that was awesome, man. It's crazy. You're right though. I don't think I've ever seen him do another English interview. I think he's like Canelo, where because Canelo speaks English, but it's one of those things where he doesn't want to do it at the press conference or whatever, but which is understandable. But I feel like Marquez, maybe I saw him do like he did an interview in Spanish and then right at the end he threw some English in and it was like a full sentence.
Yeah, but not a whole interview. Not a whole interview.
Definitely not. Yeah, no, absolutely not, man.
That was it. That was a gem, man. That was a gem.
Yeah. Aside from that one, what was your favorite event to cover? Like, what was the?
Bro, let me tell you, like, the Joshua and Ruiz. That was awesome. Like, I wasn't really covering that fight. Like, I was just there. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't get access because, it was his first American debut. So a lot of, I guess, the UK and overseas press took a lot of the credentials and stuff like that. So I wasn't able to get the credentials for that one. But I bought a ticket because I was like, I got to be there. I flew into New York. I bought a ticket. And it was crazy because I actually was in the nosebleeds, right? And then throughout the undercard, I'm scoping the lower level. And I'm trying to see, like, what section, like, who's not sitting where they're supposed to be, whatever. Like, what's empty.
See how.
And right before the main event, like, I snuck down and I was like, there was a section with like about 5 seats that were empty throughout the whole night. Yep. But I was like, nobody's sitting here. And I went down there and I was like right there where the tunnel on the opposite end, but where the tunnel where they come out.
Right.
So like, I was like hovering over the bar to see the tunnel. And I mean, I had great seats, man. For that main event, I had great seats and it was a great fight. It was an upset. Nobody thought that Joshua was going to lose. And he dropped them, and it's crazy because I got footage like right there by the ring because I was that close and everything that basically when he got dropped, Andy Ruiz, I started breaking out the camera because I was like, oh my God, he's gonna knock him out. Right. And then all of a sudden, boom, he caught Joshua and Joshua went down and everybody went crazy because, to be honest, there was a lot of UK fans in Madison Square Garden.
Right.
Like that felt like he was in England. That's how much crowd support he had in there. So it was ballistic. And, even though he lost and they were there for him, the UK fans are the realest fans because, they wasn't hating. They were congratulating and cheering on Andy Ruiz for his performance. So, you got to respect them for that.
I mean, that was another moment where it was like the whole heavyweight picture. It was, talking about Wilder and Joshua. That's all anyone could talk about for months.
Yeah.
The minute that happened, that conversation was over. You know what I mean? Over.
So I did the weigh-in. I did cover the weigh-in. So I went the night before and I went to the weigh-in. I got into the weigh-in and I did interviews with Carl Frampton. I did not Carl Frampton, Carl Froch. I did an interview with Carl Froch, Johnny Nelson, those guys. And of course they're pro, UK and everything like that. So they were talking like, Joshua was gonna thrash this guy and he was gonna be. Yeah, so they were heavily in it. You can check those videos too on YouTube. I got them up there.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, when they signed that fight, I was like, because he was supposed to fight Jarrell Miller, right?
Yeah, and then Miller got popped. So
right. When they signed him, I was like, the truth is Ruiz has got faster hands.
Right.
Like between him and Miller, I think Ruiz has got the faster hands, and I think when we're seeing people talking about that fight, they didn't really know what Joshua was in for in a sense, because even if Ruiz is not in the best shape or whatever you want to say, he's effective. Like he knows how to land his punches. He's got quick hands. He knows how to cut the ring off. Like he knows how to fight.
He's a good fighter. He's always been a good fighter. But, everybody overlooked him because of the weight issue. You know what I mean? They saw him. He was, they thought he was going to gas out. We knew that he was fast. He was going to start fast. But, nobody thought that Joshua was going to lose. Joshua had the jab. Joshua had the height, the reach. He had the power. We knew that Andy had a good chin because we've seen him in other fights where, he took good shots and stuff like that. But everybody thought that Joshua was going to get to him. Nobody expected that.
Nah, I didn't really either. I just thought he could give him a fight. I didn't think I wasn't writing him off altogether, but it was hard to imagine. I mean, in my mind, the way I thought it probably would look is the way the second fight looked. You know, that's sort of what I was expecting. Like, Andy's going to have his moments. He'll probably clip him at some point. But for the most part, Joshua's going to, you know, he's going to be up on his toes. He's going to keep the jab working. And it was weird because that first fight, it was like he could not pull the trigger. He really could not pull the trigger on Ruiz the way he wanted to. And then once he got hurt, it was just survival mode. He
didn't look himself. Like if you actually see the way he walked into the ring, that he was like super relaxed. And you know, there was a whole bunch of rumors that what was going on in the dressing room, that he had like a panic attack or nonsense. You know what I mean? Maybe, you know, coming to America, he was out of his comfort zone and stuff like that. But, you know, I thought he just took him lightly. That's basically it. You know what I mean? He caught him with a crazy shot that dropped him. And it looked like it was going to be over with that shot. You know what I mean? And then Andy just showed that Mexican, you know, spirit. He came back and he showed the hand speed, and he never dealt with anybody with hand speed like that before. And, you know, he just caught him. It just caught him off guard. You know, he's been rocked before. You know, we saw what, you know, Dillian White did to him when he rocked him and stuff. So, you know, Andy got good pop. He got good power, and he was able to catch him.
And Andy also throws good combinations. His combinations are really fluid, whereas Joshua's got that kind of, it's effective, robotic, that long mechanical style. Andy's a little more fluid. You know what I mean? So it's like once he had him hurt, it's too random for Joshua to time it out. So it's coming from different angles, and he's just swinging on him, you know? And I don't think, you know, White's not that good of a combination puncher. Klitschko's not that good of a combination puncher. So it was like when he had been hurt before, he wasn't necessarily in with somebody that had that type of style to just get in and start swinging, you know?
He needed to fight the fight that he did in the second fight.
Yeah.
You know, Andy had, you know, his moments, but also he was at fault in that second fight because he came out of weight, you know, he was out of shape. And, you know, it was his fault the way he came in. But, you know, Joshua fought a disciplined fight in that second fight, and that's the fight that he needed to fight in the first fight. You know, use the jab, use the movement, set up his shots. You know, he was more cautious in the second fight, especially, you know, grabbing and holding. He didn't want to let his hands go. But, you know, if he would have had a little bit of that aggression with the game plan that he had in the second fight, with the boxing more, then he would have knocked him out in the first fight.
I think it's possible. And also he did the same thing with Pulev. I felt like he was really patient, you know, with his style, and he got him hurt. He didn't rush in the way he did with Ruiz and leave himself open. Like,
well, he learned.
Yeah, it looks like he's learned all the lessons. If anything, I wish he was one notch up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just wish he had just a little more spice to him. You know what I mean? Like, I want him to just be a little spicier in there. I want him to get a little more fucking physical. And because I like what he does and he's got the skills, but there's moments where I'm just like, I want you to put something on this guy right now. And you're not really doing it, you know? But
I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan.
I am too. And I think that aside from now that I've seen his last couple of fights and everything that he's learned, I think the him and Fury fight is as good as it's ever been. And I definitely don't think that, looking back now, I don't think Wilder would have had the skill set to get inside on him. I just don't think I think Joshua could just kind of jab and pop and move, and I think it would kind of be easy for him.
I always favored Joshua over Deontay Wilder throughout the whole build-up. You know, for years they've been, you know, like 2 years they were going at each other, and they were supposed to make this fight. The fight never happened. I always favored Anthony Joshua because of the boxing skills, because I knew, you know, Wilder was only just a one-punch fighter. You know what I mean? He had that great knockout. That was his equalizer. And, you know, I was also a big fan of Luis Ortiz. And I was at the Luis Ortiz first fight, you know, at the Barclays Center. Right. And he was boxing him. He was doing well until he got caught, you know, and then it got into a little bit of a dog fight. And then in that 10th round is when he really laid them out. And I was like, oh my God, like what happened? Like, you had the fight like so close. Like, he almost stopped Wilder in that fight. And in the second fight, he fought a perfect game fight. You know, like he was on his toes. He was boxing beautifully. I mean, this guy was pitching a shutout against Wilder in that second fight. And then one shot, it was over. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. So I knew that Joshua had those boxing skills as far as a good jab. And also, you know, he was able to put his punches together well, that he was able to land harder shots to really affect Wilder. But I said, it was funny because when I was watching the Ruiz fight and I saw Ruiz drop Anthony Joshua, I said to myself at that moment, if Anthony Joshua survives this fight, he's not going to survive Deontay Wilder. At that moment is when I changed my mind about Anthony Joshua, that I said, you know what? When I saw him get dropped the way he got against Andy Ruiz, right there at that moment, I was like, oh my God. I said, if this guy survives this fight, I don't think he's going to beat Deontay Wilder, because Wilder's power is real. Like, it's like one of the best knockout punchers. He's the Ernie Shavers and the Mike Tyson of this era. Like, he has that type of freakish power that he could be losing the whole entire fight and then hit you with that one shot and it's over. Just like the first Fury fight, you know what I mean? Like, who the hell expected him? What? It was the 12th round and he dropped him. I mean, it could have been a knockout. You know what I mean?
Anybody else it was. Anybody else.
I'm surprised that he didn't even call the fight off. Like, the minute his eyes rolled back, it looked like it was over.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was a miracle that he got up.
It really was a miracle that he got up. But and I felt the same way about Joshua after he lost to Ruiz. But in the last two, I feel like he's learned enough of those lessons. And I think that Wilder, not that the bubbles burst, but there's a little more of a blueprint. You know what I mean? Like, Fury showed that if you got the skills and you can get a little bit physical with him, that he doesn't really have the inside stuff. You know what I mean? He's not slick enough on the inside to know how to maneuver that. And now when I think, okay, if Wilder hurts Joshua, that's always possible, right? He catches him with one good one and he goes out. But if he hurts him and he doesn't put him out, I don't know if he's got the skills to set another one up.
No.
You know what I mean? I think Joshua's worked out. You know, he's shown that he can survive those moments. You know, he got stopped standing on his feet. You got to give it to him. And so, I mean, I guess in general, now I favor Joshua, whereas I would have favored Wilder by quite a bit, you know, 3 years ago when they were talking about it. For the same reason. The same reason. Ortiz is boxing a shutout, one punch, and it's, you know, and it's lights out.
That's Wilder's greatest strength, is that right hand. You know what I mean? You take away that right hand, the way Fury was able to do in the second fight, then, you know, he's nothing. You know what I mean? Like Deontay Wilder, I thought he lost the first Tyson Fury fight. Like, I actually had him winning 2 rounds tops, and it was the rounds that he actually scored knockdowns in.
Yep.
Other than that, I think Tyson was pitching like a 10-round shutout type thing.
It wasn't a good decision. It was not. It was definitely not a good decision.
No. He definitely should have lost that fight with the knockdowns.
I think the first time I watched it, and maybe it was like the tension of it, because Wilder's just in the ring, he's so intimidating. You're waiting for that one shot. But I think the first time I watched it, I had it 8-4, 9-3. And in my mind, I was like, all right, so if I have it 8-4, 114, 112, it's not that far off. But then the second time I watched it, and I'd already knew what happened, I was like, oh, Fury's winning basically every round of this fight, with the exception
10 rounds to 2. That's what I had it. 10 rounds to 2.
And I think that's fair. I thought
he was running away with that fight.
What 5 rounds did he take? You know, that it's like the 2 knockdowns is great, but what 5 rounds did he win for those 2 knockdowns to count? You know what I mean? I didn't see it. Anyways, I was watching also your last video about Gervonta and Mario Barrios. How you feeling about that fight?
I mean, on paper, it's a good matchup. You know what I mean? The kid is young. He's talented. You know what I mean? I thought he actually lost against the Russian dude that he fought, the one that had like 7 fights and stuff. I thought he lost that fight. You know what I mean? And to fight somebody like Gervonta, who is definitely smaller, moving up in weight, he has more experience. He has quicker hands. He has great punching power. You know what I mean? I think Gervonta is going to eat this kid up. Once he figures out how to get past the size advantage, it's going to be a no-brainer. He's going to beat this kid up.
There's an element of it where it's a risk, inherently a risk, because he's moving up 2 weight classes. But it seems like there's a lot of unfinished business that he's leaving behind in these other two weight classes.
Of
Do you
course.
think that that's something he wants to do, or do you think that's something that his team wants him to do? You know what I mean?
His team. You know, Floyd is his promoter. Alice is his advisor. These guys are setting him up to be like Adrian Broner, what Adrian Broner could have been, but wasn't. But Adrian Broner was able to get a lot of opportunities because he had Al Heyman in his corner. That's why he's a 4th division world champion. You know, who did he really beat to become a world champion? You know, I mean, he just won titles. He could claim that fame of being a 4th division world champion. And Gervonta is going to claim that fame of being a 3 division world champion. You know what I mean? He's being put in good positions where the WBA, you know, basically sets up titles for PBC. You know, the WBA has these secondary titles, these interim titles. And it's similar, you know, because you have other organizations like the WBO that favors Top Rank. And they do the same thing for Top Rank and everything like that. So, you know, although that the WBO doesn't create multiple titles like the way WBC does, or even the way the WBA does, you know, but the WBA is notorious for, you know, creating these secondary titles for PBC fighters. And Gervonta, you know, he won a secondary title at 135. Now he's going to go up to 140 for another secondary title. So he's going to call himself a 3 division champion, but in reality, he only won an official real title at 130 when he beat Pedraza. Right. You know, and then he never fought any of the guys at 130 pounds. And let me tell you something, Gervonta, I'm not a fan of Gervonta, but I respect Gervonta because he is a very good young talent. And I think he beats mostly everyone at 130 pounds and at 135 pounds. Like if you put all those names, like at the time when Tevin Farmer was the champion, and they were offering him a lot of money to come over to the zone, you know, I thought he would knock out Tevin Farmer easily, you know what I mean? But he never, right, you know, and that's my problem with Tank is that, you know, I think you could beat Jamel Herring. I think you could beat Miguel Bachel. And Bachel, to me, was the top dog at 130 pounds. And what Oscar Valdez did to him is what I expected Gervonta to do. And Gervonta never tested himself to go and do that. You know what I mean? He could have snatched that belt easily, you know, because I knew that it would have been a great fight, but I knew that Gervonta was better and that he would have took out, you know, Miguel Bachel. You know, Jojo Diaz, he'll beat him. You know, all these guys. The only guy that I say at 130 pounds that gives Gervonta trouble is Shakur Stevenson. That's it. Everybody else, he washes. He goes up to 135. I got him over Teofimo Lopez. I think he can beat Teofimo Lopez. Theo is good. He had a great performance against, you know, Lomachenko, you know, but I think Gervonta can edge Teofimo Lopez. And then you have Devin Haney, which is the only guy that I believe at a 135 that would give Gervonta the most trouble.
Really?
I think he washes everybody out. I think he washes Ryan Garcia out. You know, I don't think Garcia is going to be able to beat him. I think Gervonta is that good that he could beat 98% of the fighters in those two weight classes.
I agree with that also. I think it's interesting that you say Devin Haney because I was thinking about this. There's something, and I think he's really talented. Don't get me wrong. There's something about his style for me that there's still something missing. I'm not sure what it is, but like against Gamboa, you know, you're so dominant. You're winning every single round. And for some reason, this is flat. And it was like the same thing with the fight before, where it's like, it's obvious that you're talented. It's obvious that you're better than this guy and that you're winning every round, and it's still flat. So for me, I was like, maybe with Tank can capitalize on some of that. You know, maybe it's that he's not sitting down on his shots enough. I'm not really sure, but I think that Haney, which is actually interesting. I think he still needs to build, and I think this fight he just signed with Linares is a really good fight on that. It's a really good stage on that. What do you think about that matchup?
That's a great fight, man. I'm a big Jorge Linares fan.
Me too.
And you know, Linares has that great speed. He has good power. He has great boxing skills, but he has that weak chin. So he's always going to be, you know, in trouble in a fight. And Devin, is going to be a real test for him, how he's going to handle the speed, how he's going to handle, a guy that could punch really well, but I think Devin has the boxing skill. Devin is a special type of fighter that I put him in the category of a Floyd, of a Pernell Whitaker, and an Andre Ward. Really? I think he's that type of caliber fighter that he's not exciting, because if you look at Pernell, if you look at Floyd, and you look at Andre Ward, those guys wasn't exciting fighters, but they were so good and they were so dominant that they didn't get knockouts all the time. They just basically won almost every round against you. You know what I mean?
But I think the only difference where I think he still has to make that jump is those guys made it look easy. Even if it was like not the most entertaining, they made it look easy. Like when Rigondeaux's doing his Rigondeaux thing, he's making it look easy. He's not really sweating too much for it. Whereas with Haney, there's moments where he gets caught or he's just not switched on. And I think if he can make that leap, I think he handles all of them. But if he's still in that phase in his development, I don't know if he has the power and just the brutal style to come forward and take it to Linares, which I think it'll be interesting because I think like you said, Linares has got great speed. He's got really great ability, but you never know where this is at. So unless Haney can catch him, which he will at some point, but if he can't catch him and really rock him, I could see a world where Linares really gives him some problems and makes it hard for him to sit down on his shots,
He's definitely going to test him, and I see this fight going 12 rounds easily. Going 12. Yeah, I don't see a knockout. Haney's not a knockout fighter. He has decent power, but like you said, he doesn't press. He's not a pressure guy. He's a finesse guy. He goes in there and he throws you the off speed. He throws you the jab. He works the body. He's a good technician, and he's going to go in there. He's going to be tested. He's going to get hit. He's going to return fire. It's going to make it very interesting. A lot of critics are going to jump all over him because they're going to say he didn't finish Linares the way Lomachenko finished Linares. Linares got hit with a body shot, and he was out. And that happens. Those are those type of body shots like you saw Bernard Hopkins hit Oscar De La Hoya, like you saw Roy Jones knock out Virgil Hill. You know what I mean? That type of body shot. When you get hit with that type of body shot, you're not getting up. You know, so Lomachenko, he got away with that one, you know what I'm saying? Because he was able to time it perfectly and he hurt him and it was over. You know what I mean? But other than that, I see Haney going the distance with him and I see him winning a decision. It might be a good decision, majority type decision, but Linares is definitely going to show a lot in that fight for us to really gauge and see where Haney is at. But I think Haney's going to pass the test.
I think it's possible, and I think that it's at least going to give us a better idea of if Haney is going to box real technical with him. We're going to get to see just how good at that he is because Linares is good at that. If he's going to march forward and try to stop him and he does it, then it's like if he needs to get it done like that, he can. I think it's going to be a really great test for him.
If he stops Linares, a lot of people are going to say Linares was washed up. Linares was old. He got knocked out by, Pablo Cano and everything. But, that was at 140 pounds where he had no business being up there and he got caught. They're just going to say that he's past his prime. He's not going to get credit if he knocks him out. It's a no-win fight for him, really.
I guess maybe he gets credit for it he gets more credit for it, I think, if it's not a one punch, if it's like an accumulation, and it's cuts or whatever. I think he gets more credit for just overwhelming him stylistically. I think if he catches him, people are going to go, I guess that's always possible when you fight this guy, Right. But going back to some of the guys from that weight class, you mentioned Gervonta not really before moving up, taking on the best guys at 130, guys like Berchelt, guys like Shakur Stevenson, guys like Valdez. After watching Valdez and Berchelt, what do you think is next for Oscar Valdez? Because I think that's the kind of performance where you're really deserving of something bigger.
I want the Shakur Stevenson fight. If you watch my interview that I did with Shakur Stevenson, I did an interview with him 2 weeks prior to him having his first pro fight. And I mentioned a fight between him and Oscar Valdez as a future fight for him. And he wasn't even a professional yet. He didn't even have his first pro fight. And I told him, I said, I would like to see you fight Oscar Valdez. What do you think about that? And at the time, they were very friendly because they were sparring together and stuff like that. So he gave him a lot of, big ups and shouting him out and everything. He was saying that, that he's a good friend and everything like that. But then now, fast forward a couple of years later, he's chasing him. He was chasing him at 126 pounds, and Valdez vacated and moved up to 130. Now Shakur's at 130. He's calling for that fight. He should get that opportunity, because right now Shakur is not even getting the title shot, which I told people that, why did he move up to 130 when he wasn't going to get a title shot right away? He's about to have his second fight at 130 pounds, and he's not fighting the top names. He's not going to get a big name at all. He's going to fight somebody possibly for an interim title, because they still holding up the WBO title that Jamel Herring has. Jamel Herring most likely is not going to fight Shakur Stevenson, and they just waiting for the big fight for Jamel Herring to fight Carl Frampton, and that fight has been postponed already like 3 times, and Shakur should have got that title shot. So if you're not going to give him the title shot with the WBO, reward him by giving him a much bigger fight with Oscar Valdez for the WBC, because that's the best matchup at 130 pounds. The best matchup.
It's the best matchup that doesn't involve Tank for sure. And I think that if Tank is going to weight hop like this, that's really the fight to determine who's the best at 130. And it's interesting because I thought, just based on the Quigg fight, based on a couple of other fights, like we've seen Valdez get into physical fights with guys that aren't necessarily as skilled as Burchell. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, if Quigg can kind of draw him into that kind of fight, I feel like Burchell will be able to do it. But, Valdez was on his fucking P's and Q's that whole fight, man. It was like he really didn't make one mistake. He didn't get caught with anything stupid. Every time his back even was near the ropes, he would turn off. He had, he was so switched on that I'm watching.
Game plan. Great game plan.
I'm like, if this doesn't get you a big fight, I don't know what does. Like, he's taking the best guy at this weight class and making him look silly.
They're going to milk it. They're going to milk it. That's what Top Rank does. They're going to get him fighting a guy that's a solid guy and not a big name, just to keep him with a title defense, just to keep him away from Shakur Stevenson and those type of fights. They're not going to give him, he's not going to get a big fight right now. He's going to ride into another title defense and that's it. I think that with that fight against Burchell, he fought a perfect game plan, and it's all due to Eddie Reynoso. Eddie Reynoso has done a great job with this kid. Oscar Valdez, he has improved since the Scott Quigg fight, and, he fought a perfect fight. He was boxing beautifully. His jab was on point. The movement was on point. The defense was on point. And, he surprised me by getting a knockout, because I didn't think he was going to win by knockout. I didn't even pick Burchell, and I like Burchell a lot. I didn't pick Burchell to win by knockout either. I thought this fight was going to go 12 rounds, and I thought that Burchell was going to beat him up for 12 rounds, because Oscar Valdez has a great chin. The guy fought with a broken jaw. What I mean? So he has a great chin. He has tremendous heart. And we knew that coming into this fight. So I said this fight was going to go 12 rounds, and Oscar Valdez is going to get beat up by Burchell, but nobody expected the outcome. It was a great game plan. And you got to give all respect to Eddie Reynoso in the job that he has done with this kid.
For real, man. And the jab was fucking money. The whole time it was like, wow, he's really prepared for this. He's not going to let himself sit in the pocket with this guy. He's not going to give him a second to set. He's keeping him moving the whole, I was just really impressed with it, man, because, and I was also, I couldn't have been more wrong about how I thought that fight was going to go. I love that. I kind of love that feeling where it's like, wow, he really fucking pulled it off. He really pulled it off. I thought it was one of the best performances of this COVID era, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
It was really impressive.
I expected more of a war from both of them, but he boxed such a beautiful fight that, he totally took the fight from Burchell. He just totally threw that whole mentality of this is going to be two Mexicans, bang it out, the way they were building it up. for Morales and Barrera. We were gonna expect that type of fight. It didn't happen. It was just strictly dominant performance by Valdez, and you got to tip your hats off to this kid. This kid really put on a great fight.
He did. And I was actually thinking about this because they've been talking about the fact, that maybe Lomachenko is not a full-blown lightweight. I would love to see Valdez and Lomachenko. I think that's a great fight.
I mean, Lomachenko, people are writing him off. They're saying that, I mean, it's in boxing, man. Boxing is not like UFC. You know what I mean? You can lose in UFC and come back and still make a great fight, and they won't write you off. And in boxing, you lose once, and it's like, forget about it. You're a bum. You know what I mean? That's the way they see it. I don't know why it's like that. All the greats, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, all of these guys lost, and they were still great fighters. But nowadays, the way people think is like, you got one loss, it's a wrap for you. If you got like 3 losses, like, Pacquiao got 8 losses? This man is still a great fighter. Right, yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's crazy, the mentality.
And you get punished then for fighting your contemporaries. Like, he's taking the risk to fight this tough young guy. He is the favorite, but he took the risk. That's not an easy fight to fight Teofimo Lopez. And I think it's just a shame. Like, if these guys are going to fight each other, that we're going to write off the loser, when in reality, it's like, I personally don't think of Lomachenko any differently. I think it was weird that he didn't let his hands go for 6 rounds, but as a fighter, I don't really look at him any different, I
think Theo fought a great fight. He also had a great game plan.
Yeah.
He fought a perfect fight. There was moments, towards the middle that, Lomachenko was able to turn it up on him. I think there were some factors in that fight, no excuses and everything like that. I thought Lomachenko was going to win that fight. I love that Theo won the fight because I was rooting for Theo. Yeah. The kid is from Brooklyn, and I was rooting for him, and I wanted to see him win. I like Lomachenko as a fighter. I think he was an absolute outstanding fighter. And I didn't think he was number 1 pound for pound. I had Terrence Crawford as the pound for pound at the time. I have Canelo now as my pound for pound. But, I saw him right there, top 3, Lomachenko. Yep. And Lomachenko, he still could beat a lot of guys in 130 and at 135. I think he could still beat a lot of guys. And that night, like I said, I don't want to make excuses for him, but he was off for more than a year. You know what I mean? So it could have been ring rust. His timing wasn't right. He didn't take this kid seriously. He was talking a lot of trash, saying that, he was going to beat this kid real easy. It was going to be an easy fight, and it wasn't an easy fight. He slept on Theo. Theo fought a perfect fight, and it benefited him. You know what I mean? All respect to him. He fought a great fight, and he won that fight hands down. And Lomachenko looked like shit in that fight. He had an off night, and you have a lot of fighters that have that off night where they just don't look good. You know what I mean? And if the other guy is on his game, the other guy is going to take advantage of that situation, and he's going to come out on top. And that's exactly happened with Theo.
I also felt like, to be fair, I didn't think the scorecards were good. Like, they had it 11-1, 10-2, and at least 8, 9, 10, and 11. I thought Lomachenko won pretty clearly. I thought he didn't look good in the first half because he just wasn't active. But I felt like by the time he got moving, I think he thought, okay, this kid's kind of been throwing for 6 rounds. Maybe I'll be able to, get to him in the last couple of rounds. And I just think he got started too late. I think it was either
too late,
the injury, or just mentally what he started doing in the 7th, he should have started doing in the 4th or the 5th. If he wanted
I can't remember how I scored it, but I think I scored it by 8-4, maybe 7-5.
Yeah, 8-4, 7-5, I think, is a fair score. But 11-1 was like, come on, you're not even fucking watching the fight.
All these judges are horrible. They're killing the sport.
It's one of my biggest frustrations, man, with boxing right now is how often the decisions get read, and then it just immediately puts me in a bad fucking mood because you spend all this time on a night, maybe you buy a pay-per-view, and then you get these decisions that are just not in reality,
right,
at all, and it's so frequent. You know what I mean?
And it's been going on for years, though. You know what I mean? Chavez and Whitaker, perfect example.
That's a horrible decision. It's a horrible. Recently, that Rosado and Danny Jacobs fight, dude. That decision was horrible, man. I couldn't even. And then they get the city wrong. So it's like you rip him off with the decision, and then you give him 30 seconds to have that feeling like I did it, and then you take that
fucked up. That was like what's his name? Steve Harvey when he did the pageant.
yeah. That's exactly. I was like, I can't believe they double fucked him on this, and I thought he clearly won the fight. I didn't think it was. I thought that was one of the worst times I've seen Danny Jacobs, and he's one of my favorite fighters. But I'm watching it, and I'm like, he's not letting his hands go. Rosado's jabbing, moving. He's got his head moving. He's not doing anything fancy, but he's getting the job done. And then they're reading these scores, and I'm like, they're going to rip him off. And then they said from Philadelphia. I was like, oh, they did finally some justice in boxing. And it wound up not being the case. I realized we've been going for a little bit. Last thing, maybe before we get going, we got this Estrada or Juan Fransisco Estrada and Chocolatito rematch this weekend.
Great fight.
What you think about that one? I'm excited about this.
That's gonna be the fight that we expected from Oscar Valdez and Burchell. That's gonna be our Barrera Morales fight right there. That is a great fight. I think fight of the year. That style matchup between them two is fireworks. It's gonna be an awesome fight, and I can't wait. You know, I'm a big Chocolatito fan. You know, I love Chocolatito. And this kid, I got to watch him in Madison Square Garden on the Triple G undercard, and he's amazing. I saw him twice. I saw him when he fought Brian Valerio.
Yep.
When he fought him, and I also saw him when he lost, which I thought he won.
I was
at the time because I saw it live, and I thought he got robbed.
Yeah.
But then I rewatched it on TV. And I really analyzed and studied the fight and everything. He lost that fight.
Really?
First fight. Yeah, I thought he lost that first fight.
I don't know.
I thought he won when I saw it live. When I saw it live, I was like, what the fuck? I was like, they robbed him. Yeah. But then when I rewatched it and I really analyzed it, I thought he lost the fight. I think, let me tell you something. Chocolatito, he's a great fighter, one of the greatest small middle fighters, little fighters in boxing, but he doesn't belong at 115. And I've said this so many times because I thought he looked bad against Carlos Cuadras. I thought he lost that fight.
That was a rough fight.
I thought he lost that. I said he lost that fight. You know, I thought Cuadras won that fight, and I said this kid doesn't belong at 115 pounds. Yeah. And when he fought, the kid from Thailand and everything, was it Runvisa?
Yeah, so Runvisa.
This guy fucking destroyed them in that second fight. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I really don't like him at this weight, but I think the Estrada fight right now is kind of even because Estrada's not a big 115 pounder. You know what I mean? He's also coming from the lower weight class. He's a small guy, but right now he's riding that wave where he's hot right now. He's the best in the division right now.
For sure.
And, he's more at the peak than what, Chocolatito is, but I think, Chocolatito looked really good in his last fight. And maybe, he's gotten the kinks out where, I know he lost his trainer and he was going through a lot of stuff outside the ring and stuff like that. And, personal issues and stuff. And the two losses back to back kind of set him back. But I think he's getting back his stride. So I think that this fight right here is going to be a hell of a fight. I'm hoping that he wins. I'm rooting for Chocolatito. Like I said, I'm a big fan of his. I want to see him win that fight. I definitely thought he won the first fight, even though it was a great fight. I watched that fight on TV, and it was an excellent fight. But Chocolatito won that fight. And I think it'll go most likely the same way. And I'm hoping that he'll pull it off. But Estrada's going to give him hell.
It's tricky with the weight thing, right? Because he looks kind of small at 115. But at 112 towards the end, I felt like he was starting to fight like a weight drained guy. Like he couldn't take punches. This like the Cuadras fight. I could be wrong about this. I think the Cuadras fight was at 112. And
it was 115.
It was
115.
That's interesting. See,
that's when he won. That's when he won the WBC title that this guy Rundesai won.
Yeah, and it may just be that he had a couple of fights like that, and then that Cuadras fight was so fucking physical, and then the first Rungvisai fight was also so physical. And then by the time he got to that rematch, it's like he's been fighting killers for years now, every time he's got to go out. And then I think the time off has done him a lot of really well. And I thought that Calya 5 fight, he looked like what I remember him looking. You know what I mean? Against a good young fighter that's in his prime.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I think it's a great matchup. And like you said, I think Estrada is definitely the best at that weight right now, for sure. And I think he kind of reminds me of Juan Manuel Marquez in a way. He has kind of a
similar style.
Right. He's like an in the pocket counterpuncher.
He's top 10 pound for pound.
Definitely. And what's cool about those guys, because you don't always get this with every weight class, those guys are fighting each other at 115. Like Cuadras and Estrada just fought. Sor Rungvisai and Estrada fought twice. Chocolatito and Estrada are about to do, like, these guys are fighting each other. And
but they don't have a lot of involvement with big promoters. You know what I mean? So a lot of these guys, these little guys, they don't have people to fight. You know, they'll go overseas and they'll fight, you know, in Japan, you know, in Europe, they'll fight in Mexico and stuff like that. So if you watch a lot of the lower weight classes, like the 105, 108, 112, 115, these guys are all fighting each other. Like, if you look at their resume, these guys are multiple world champions. They're all fighting each other. It's like a huge tournament, because there's other guys other than the big names that you watch that are fighting each other as well. You know what I mean? And you'd be like, oh, this guy was a champion. He was a champion. The other guy was a champion.
Same at bantamweight, you know, with the World Boxing Super Series, and Noye and Donaire fighting each other. I think you're right, because they're not as mixed up with big promoters. There's not as many hurdles to making the big fights.
It's not a lot of money.
Right. Which is weird to me, because it's like, for somebody like Chocolatito, like, he's just an exciting fighter. If you like boxing, you're going to like watching him. You know what I mean? But I guess it's still kind of heavyweight boxing is the cash cow, right? Heavyweights.
Like everything up from featherweight and up, it's like, you know, that's where you start seeing the money rise and stuff like that. You know, Prince Nassim was the first one to make $1 million at featherweight. You know what I mean? Look how many great featherweight fighters there were back then. Wilfredo Gomez was awesome back then. Azuma Nelson was awesome back then. You know, these were great fighters. You know, Willie Pap, all of them. And then to think Prince Nassim, who was a ticket seller, was the one to really make, you know, $1 million and really blow up the featherweight division. He was the first.
That's a crazy little fact. I actually didn't know that. That's really weird. And
these little guys wasn't making money. Michael Carbajal, you know, all these guys were great fighters. You know, you had the other guy from Mexico, Gonzalez, that fought Carbajal. Right. That, you know, Humberto Gonzalez. Those guys were great fighters. You know what I mean? They put on wars, you know, strictly entertainment, which boxing fans love and everything. And a lot of the networks like HBO, until Chocolatito came on the scene, wasn't really airing those fights anymore since the 80s, since the Carbajal days. And Showtime wasn't really airing it like that. You know, they just stood away from the little lower weight classes, and it went overseas, where a lot of them were fighting in Japan and stuff like that, or fighting in Mexico. So you didn't get to see that. And there was no money involved in that. So you don't have the Bob Arums involved. You don't have the PBCs involved. You didn't have none of those people involved. Now you got it blowing up because of guys like Chocolatito, because of guys, the monster, you know, and the kid from Japan. You know, those are the guys that are making it, you know, exciting again and everything like that, because they put it on great fights and they're knocking guys out left and right. So, you know, it's back. And hopefully these promoters, you know, maybe not. We don't want to jinx it, because once they start getting involved in those lower weight class, then you won't see those big fights, matchups that you love to see.
Yeah, man. I think I don't want to take too much of your time, man. I really appreciate you coming on today. This was a lot of fun. I definitely didn't expect to do this long, but it's really been cool talking to you, bro.
I love talking boxing, you know what I mean? So I appreciate you having me on the show. You know what I mean? It's been a while since I did a show in a minute and stuff, but, you know, I thank you.
Yo, anytime, man. We all need it, right? We can't go to the fights. I love going to the boxing gym and working out and talking with people, and we can't do a lot of those things right now. So it was a lot of fun, bro. I appreciate it. Maybe we can do this again sometime.
No doubt.
All right, Jay Calderon. Take it easy, brother. Peace.